not guilty on murder and manslaughter. Was it because they had reasonable doubt or because they thought she was innocent?
So I think for the jurors, there's a mix of some people think that she was definitely innocent, and the other people, there was a lot of reasonable doubt, at least to where we didn't want to convict her.
That's really interesting. So could you give me a breakdown there? Roughly what percentage of the jury felt she was innocent?
I mean, I can only speak for myself. I think that she was innocent. It's hard to tell exactly what people think deep down. There was a lot of things thrown at us, of evidence. So it's hard to tell what truly.
So you say in your head she was innocent. Does that mean you think she was framed by people inside that house?
It doesn't necessarily mean that. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to John.
Fair.
Really, I was only presented a limited scope of what happened at the night, and I could only base my opinion off of the evidence that was shown in the courtroom. So
fair enough.
I don't really know if there was a cover-up or not. I know that's the big conspiracy around it, but I don't really know. All I know is that there was a lot of holes in the investigation.
There you go. Fair enough.
Deliberate holes or not deliberate holes, it's kind of hard from me sitting back to know that, what actually happened.
So
Respect.
What was the feeling of the jury? Because Alan Jackson and the other lawyers raised the issue that she was framed by cops and that they would have turned that house upside down if they really wanted to do an honest investigation, and that he was not hit by a car. He was attacked in that house, bitten by a dog, and then put outside to frame her. Did people on the jury, or some of them, buy that argument?
I think some of them bought that argument. It's just hard to tell, though, because whether or not we think that there was malicious intent, we were only presented with the facts that they didn't go into the house. So,
yep, there you go.
There's an example of reasonable doubt. So, there's other examples of reasonable doubt. So even if you want to completely buy into the theory or not, that wasn't what we were tasked with. We were tasked with finding, convicting, or deciding on this person's fate based on the proof and the evidence that the Commonwealth was able to present. And there was a lot of holes in the investigation.
This guy sounds like he kind of understood the assignment. I'm having a lot better feeling about this guy than Jury Ronnie. This guy sounds like he kind of understood the assignment. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what really happened. I wasn't presented with evidence. I don't know, man. All I know is that, what I was presented with was kind of shit. Didn't do it for me. Don't really know what happened. Don't have enough information. What I do know is what I was shown as shit. Respect. Respect you, juror. It sounds like you understood the assignment. Good job.
Yet you went many steps beyond that because you say, in your view, she was innocent. What compels you to think that?
Well, one thing that I think that compels me is we did a lot of review of the tapes, and it seemed to me that the videos that we could see from the car after the alleged incident happened, that when we could see the taillight, it was lit up red where it shouldn't just have been red. So that leaves to me a conclusion of, well, how come it's red in this video after the alleged, collision happened?
That's a pretty good question.
And it's, it's not, it doesn't have any red pieces where it should be red.
So
did you consider unexpected black hole? Did you consider that possibility? That's the reason it appeared red, because of unexpected black hole. Did you consider that idea? No? Oh, well.
So in other words, you do not believe that SUV made contact with John O'Keefe?
I don't believe that the SUV collided with John O'Keefe.
What was the initial vote with the...
Well, that kind of does it for you, right? If you don't think the collision happened, it's kind of like, yeah, we're done. That's like, yeah, that's, we can stop talking. Yeah, that works. Yeah, that's great. Good job.
The jury when you first took your vote?
We didn't do an initial straw poll. The judge recommended to us in the courtroom that is not a good way to do it. we broke down what we did is we broke down each charge, and we went from top to bottom and discussed
Okay.
everything thoroughly, and did our best to do right by the Karen Reed and the Commonwealth.
Was there a division initially?
Yeah, there was a division.
You want to clarify that?
That's what we're there to deliberate and talk about all the evidence. There was 2 months of us sitting there, them throwing all this information at us absorbing the information, going home, thinking about it, reviewing it in our heads, and we get to the deliberations, and now we have an opportunity to discuss. Some people went into the deliberations and they were still unsure after two months, and that makes sense because there was a lot of things going on. There's a lot of information. How much can you weigh one thing or another thing over,
Yeah. What about jurors who felt initially she was guilty? Were there any of them?
Yeah, there were a few jurors that think that had thought that initially when they went into the deliberations, that was their standpoint, and that's what we were there to do, to talk through all that and bring up every single piece of evidence. Is there an angle of reasonable doubt to where we're not really sure? Like, are you really sure? Are you 100%, or are you 99.9%? If you're that 99%, we can't convict you.
Well, you really can. I mean, 99%. I mean, if you ask most lawyers what reasonable doubt is, like 95 to 99% is usually what we will say, or, maybe a little bit higher than that. But yeah, if you're 99% sure, 99% will do. But he wanted 100%. So, okay, fair enough, I guess. All right.
What brought the ones who felt she was guilty over to the not guilty side? Was there anything in particular that seemed to resonate with them?
It's hard to tell from my position. You'd have to ask them about it. But in my opinion, I think it was just due to the poor investigation. There's just too many holes. And, it's hard to prove that the collision happened. So if there's reasonable doubt that happened, or that there may have been foul play, if there's room for that, then it's hard to come to a guilty verdict.
What happened when the jury initially said they had a verdict and then said, oops, no, we don't, and then 15 minutes later they said, oh, we do? What happened there?
That actually is kind of interesting. So the envelope, it was sealed and it's locked away. It'll never be looked at. But on everything on that initial slip was the same as the slip that was presented.
I believe it.
But why did they pull it back?
The pulling the back was for the OUI charge.
Driving under the influence, essentially. Drunk driving.
Yes, driving under the influence. In our deliberations, we had decided there was enough evidence and proof that she was driving under the influence.
So, how did the defense do? How did the lawyers do, in your view? Her lawyers.
For her lawyers specifically, I think they all did. I think that all the lawyers on both sides did a really good job.
Really? Well, I suppose it depends what you mean by a really good job. There are ways to view what Brennan did as being very good, if morally bankrupt. But all right, fair enough. All right.
They presented their case as well.
The police, you say the investigation was poor. The defense said it was more than poor. It was corrupt, and they pointed to the lead detective who had been fired, didn't testify in your trial. Did that have an impact? And did you think it was a corrupt police investigation?
Do I think it was a corrupt police investigation? I don't know.
Good job.
There's no way for me to know. I wasn't there. There was just there was holes in the case that left for reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
They could have checked some boxes or done some things differently. But do I know that they were corrupt? Absolutely not.
Respect. Respect. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Not my job. Was it corrupt? Don't know. Don't care. Not my problem. All I know is that it was shit. They gave me shit. That's all I know. I don't know why it was shit. And frankly, I don't care. All I need to know is that it's shit. Fantastic. This guy sounds like he understands the assignment. This guy's doing great.
I don't know that there was any corruption going on, but do I know that there wasn't enough proof or evidence secured by the police to convict Karen Reed? Absolutely.
Yep, there you go.
There was not.
That's all you need to know. That is all you need to know. Do I know it's corrupt? No. Do I know it wasn't enough? You bet your ass. Great. Good job. Fantastic. More jurors like you. If we had more jurors like you, we'd be doing fine, man. Also, do you want to be a judge? Because I think you do a better job at this point.
To say that your view was that her SUV did not make contact with O'Keefe, therefore she did not kill him, but you don't know how he died.
I would say that's fair to say. I don't know how John O'Keefe died.
Yeah.
I do not believe that there was a collision between the SUV.
There you
John
go.
O'Keefe.
Very good.
Did all of the
I don't know how he died. I do know how he didn't die. Yeah, there you go. I don't know how he died, but I do know how he didn't die. Fantastic. Great job. You understood fantastically.
hoopla around the case, the people outside, did it give you comfort in reaching a verdict like this, that you saw there was a community behind your point of view, or was it irrelevant?
Honestly, that made the pressure a lot harder, and it did not give me comfort. It made it.
How did Judge Cannoni let this one slip through? That's the only question I want to know the answer to right now. How did Judge Cannoni allow this juror to actually wind up sitting on the jury? Tisk, 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 man. Tisk, 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 man. I thought you were better than this.
It a lot harder to block out everything and come to a decision.
Why did it make it harder?
It made it harder because all of the eyes are on us. We were told we're the most important people in the courtroom, and they keep us away from the crowds of people in the front of the courthouse. But we do see them, and I don't think that having all those people swayed me to go either way. We were only tasked with looking at the evidence. We have to
respect
12 jurors. We had to back up how we felt in this, for our decision, and we couldn't let any outside factors, her punishment. We couldn't factor any of that. We had to look at the evidence that was presented to us.
Wow, you actually did your fucking job.
Really
amazing.
Understand it, and see if there's any reasonable doubt, and there was.
That guy's great. I like this guy very much. This guy gives me hope. This guy's great. He gives me hope. He's doing pretty good. He's doing pretty good. We could quibble. We could quibble, but for his first time around, I think he's doing pretty good, man. He's most of the way there. He understands the assignment. It's like, not my job, not my monkeys, not my problem. All I know is is that the vehicle didn't hit him. Cool. Right? And if it were me, I'd be like, well, all I know is that assuming the collision happened, it didn't lead to the death. Right? So I'd break it in a different point. But what do you care? Right? What do you care what my reasonable doubt is? As long as there is one, right? It's like, oh, he says he thinks the collision didn't happen. I'm like, well, maybe it happened, but it didn't lead to the death. But we each have a reasonable doubt. So what does it matter, right? As long as you break it in a reasonable doubt, who fuck cares what it is, right? So yeah, that's fine. The other thing that I sort of note is he didn't note exactly what the numbers were or percentages are, like in terms of how many jurors were guilt or how many were. And I don't know what the number is near to you, because he didn't really seem to indicate. I mean, based on his tone, and I'm tea leaf reading in his body language, which is dangerous for me because I'm not the best at that. but based on his tone, demeanor, and other things, it seemed to me to suggest that it was like more than one. I got the feeling that we were like talking in like 3 to 5, maybe. It was sort of in the range of what it seemed to me he was saying. And if it was something like that, then I think that, you know, depending on the personalities of the people, again, I think that 20% conviction number is still like a pretty good number. Like the 20% chance to convict. It's like, you know, if you assume it was 3 people, just to give a number, right? If you assume it's 3 people, it was 3-9 as the first vote, which is one hell of an assumption. But even if you assume that, like if those 3 people are particularly strong-willed and the 9 people are not as strong-willed, man, that could go a different way. You're right. You're not only talking about the intelligence of the people, but their ability to stand up to social pressure, their desire to want to please others, their desire to want to conform to others, you know, their how loud they are and all the rest of it, right? So, you know, fortunately it broke the right way, but like, you know, I think the 20% number is still a pretty good number because it's like, well, I'm basing the probability on jurors believing it, some jurors believing it, and also the probability that those jurors will be convincing jurors. They'll have charisma, they'll be persuasive, they'll be loud, they'll be whatever, right? In the social dynamics. So like, I still think the 20% number was a reasonable prediction based on this fact pattern. And based on what he just told me, it seems like reasonable. So, you know, and I don't know what it took to, how long it took, how strong. Yeah. And that's like, we still don't know, like how strong were those opinions? Like how long did it take you to convince them? What, you know, was it 5 minutes? Was it 30 minutes? How long did you spend, for example, struggling about what? Right? Did you spend 1 hour talking about murder and then you're like, oh, this is dumb, let's move on to other things? Or did you spend, 16 hours talking about murder before you were like, this is dumb, let's move on to other things? You know, there's a lot more interesting information we could get. So incidentally, by the way, if you're a juror and you'd like to speak to me, I have follow-up questions. So I'd like to know a little bit more about the dynamics of the thing and a little bit more about what was going on and so forth and so on. So all those things, that'd be great. But the jury came out the right way in the end, and thank God for that. Thank God for that.